Blog Talk Radio.
Beautiful, hot, and balmy Tuesday night in the state of Mississippi. Got quite a few of my friends here joining us tonight. I'll have Mr. Taz Taylor joining us, along with our other co-host, Ms. Lee Reed, in the house. Guys, I need to start it out with something, upon further review. I think I should take this real quick time to maybe explain myself in what might seem as an announcer being biased. I don't normally feel the need to explain myself, but I'll take this opportunity to defend what I think probably was a little bit overboard. I think, upon further review, I think that the last thing that I would want to do is have another racer think that wasn't necessarily pulling for him as much as I was pulling for somebody else. I know in the position that I'm in, we're not supposed to show bias. But my defense, it was the House Divided 40. It was a 2-day weekend of cars meeting other cars. Of course, I was on the super late model side. I'm speaking on behalf of the street stock race that was the final race of the evening on Saturday night, Sunday morning. Of course, it ended in a picture-perfect photo finish, I guess, is the only thing that you can really explain. There was not transponders recording that lap. It actually turned into this big old thing that I don't want to really get into, but I did go back and listen to the race, and I did find myself to be quite biased. And the only defense that I have in this, guys, and maybe my colleagues will kind of help me out, because I am critical. I am pretty hard on myself. Look, I want to be the most professional person that I can be on that mic. And a lot of times, I also want people to feel my passion for the sport. And I think in that instance, what really happened there was we have a young man who's been racing for, 6, 7, 8 years. He's been close, guys. I mean, he's sat on poles for big races, like the Street Stock Nationals, I think, one year. And it just never has worked out for Ben. And there's been, at times, some head scratching and figuring out how this kid was going to get to the next level, make that step. And so I guess my only defense to that is if you yourself as a racer was out there for 8 years trying your best to get a win, and you had the privilege to, basically have a hopefully knowledgeable announcer that knows how important it is for everybody in that family to see their child or their husband, their friend in victory lane. All of that hard work paid off. Because in racing, sometimes we are biased. Sometimes we are biased, and we don't mean to be. But sometimes people have to work really hard to get something, to be successful at something. And I think that for that moment, we were all fans of that kid. And no matter the indifferences, no matter what's happened over in the past or anything like that, these guys are winners. And they proved it. They got a win, and they had an announcer who took notice that the fact that this kid's tried really hard. If I've made other people mad, I'm very sorry. That was never my intention. But I'll celebrate your win just as much as I'll celebrate anybody's win, especially when it's a first-time winner. When it's a first-time winner, it's just something about a first-time winner. And I'll stop it at that. The end. Now I'd like to bring on my co-host, Chad Taylor, Ms. Lee Reed. Do you have anything to say before we can just move on from that and move on to the news? Guys? Y'all there? Hello? Hello? Is there anybody on the airwaves here? All right, so I think we're live. I'm not sure why something has happened here. We're going to bring Miss Lee, I believe. Is that you, Miss Lee?
Yeah, I'm here.
All right, good deal. All right, so I don't know what happened.
I hit the wrong button. No.
Okay.
As far as your intro, Chris, you're passionate. We know that. And you did a great job. That's all I got to say.
We'll move on. So some pretty exciting news, I guess, over the weekend. Since the last time we were on there, of course, Josh Berry, and we'll get to that in just a second. But Miss Lee Reed, I think that we have something that's just it's life, and it's very complicated, and we want to try to fit this in the little box of where it belongs and move forward. So if I can give you the floor, Miss Lee, I think that you have a couple of statements to read.
Absolutely. So everybody's heard the news of what happened with Jimmy Johnson's wife's family, and we are simply going to read the statements that have come from those surrounding them and leave it at that. Legacy Motor Club has elected to withdraw the number 84 Carvana Chevrolet from this weekend's NASCAR Cup Series event in Chicago. The Johnson family has asked for privacy at this time, and no further statements will be made. NASCAR said, "We are saddened by the tragic death of members of Chandra Johnson's family. The entire NASCAR family extends its deepest support and condolences during this difficult time to Chandra, Jimmy, and the entire Johnson and Janway family." Rick Hendrick also released a statement, longtime car owner for Jimmy Johnson. "Our family and our entire team are all grieving with Shani, Jimmy, and their loved ones. This is truly an unthinkable tragedy, and our hearts are broken for them. I've been in touch with Jimmy and offered our love, support, and the full resources of our organization in whatever capacity they need. And we at the 110 Nation also extend our love and condolences to the families. And there will be no speculation about anything. We just want to support them.
Right, and prayers with the family and everybody involved. And it has been stated that Legacy Motorsports Motor Club has come out and said that Jimmy Johnson's entry has been withdrawn for this weekend's race at Chicago. So we'll just pray for the family and pray for the best outcome possible in this terrible situation. Now, on to the news. I think that's the worst kept secret in the garage. We found out two things in this situation. First of all, I had no idea that, and it was said on DBC. I guess it's been confirmed. I didn't hear a statement where they had to retract it, but obviously Anheuser-Busch has elected to leave the Stewart-Haas organization. More details to come, I would speculate.
Wow, I missed that one.
Wow. Yes. Door bumper clear. It was stated on Door Bumper Clear, I believe, by Freddie Kraft, that Anheuser-Busch will not be returning to Stewart-Haas Racing. So, we'll come back to that.
Does that come as a surprise with Kevin leaving?
No, it's typical of Busch and this is Budweiser has been with DEI, Hendrick Motorsports, Ray Evernham, Kevin Harvick. I think Busch Beer's been about everywhere, or Bud Light, or Budweiser. I think I wrote an article 10 years ago about Anheuser-Busch being in the sport for 30 plus years. So it's been 40 years now, because that article was at least 10 years ago.
Right.
So yeah, they've been around for a very long time, and good news is, I guess, they're not departing from the sport. I speculate that they will be probably going to. Well, I'm going to leave that open. What we do know is Josh Berry has signed a long-term deal to race with Stewart-Haas Racing. Any surprise with that, Miss Lee? Is that
no? I think we've beaten that horse dead over the past several weeks, even before the announcement was made.
Well, okay, so let's hit it from this side. Rodney Childers and company. Do we see? First of all, Stewart-Haas seems to be struggling consistently every week. It seems to get worse and worse. Chase Briscoe's running around with the Rick Ware race cars. Things are bad at Stewart-Haas, and then Tony Stewart comes out and says, "We're not accepting Daddy's money." And I think that's a really courageous thing to say, and I think that it reminds me of the old times where the race team got the sponsor and they picked who they wanted in the race car. So there's a lot of different folds to that as well. You're right.
Right.
We have beat the Josh Berry to Stewart-Haas Racing to death. This is no secret. But now that it's officially here, what are the effects that it has on this team? And, Josh Berry's been sponsored by Bass Pro Shops. I had originally speculated that Bass Pro Shops may have been on its way back to Stewart-Haas Racing because of possibility of Martin Truex Jr. Now, Martin Truex Jr.'s career is still hanging in the wings. Eric Amarola's career is still hanging in the wings. And Josh Berry has been announced to replace Kevin Harvick. So this opens the door for possibility of Bass Pro Shops, I think, being Josh Berry's sponsor. Could that have an effect with how much money is going to Martin Truex Jr.? We don't know. These are the dominoes. We don't know how they're going to fall. Miss Lee.
Well, he's got KHI Enterprise behind him, so we know that they are going to be obviously aggressively looking for sponsors. Josh has had a mix of sponsors throughout his career. So who from all of his race experience is going to jump in? Could Bass be one of them?
Right. Yeah, now we're looking for a sponsor. So, and I just have a hard time believing, Ms. Lee, that Tony Stewart would make the bold statement, I'm not taking Daddy's money. We're going to have sponsors for our cars, and we're going to go get the talent that we want. And he's done this with Priest. I understand Gene Haas can bankroll about all this, but you have to have the buy-in that these sponsors are here. And I think that may have been, it could have been a kick out the door to Anheuser-Busch as well. I guess now that we're analyzing the question that was asked or presented to Tony Stewart. So, there's a lot of variables in all this now. And Eric Amarola, Martin Truex Jr., their careers are out there hanging in the wing. We don't know about Smithfield Bacon, whether or not they're going to return with Eric Amarola, or if that's maybe a sponsorship situation. I know that Tony Stewart and Stewart Haas Racing has to have some kind of sponsorship money coming into this race team, or they are going to get a lot worse.
Right, but I think we're moving away from, and we've seen this with other teams, we're moving away from businesses being a primary sponsor for a team. It's economics. It's the financial situation that the country is in right now. Some sponsors have chosen to leave the sport completely. Others are cutting back. So, here's an interesting question. Is there going to be a primary sponsor for Josh Berry, or have they cobbled together enough large sponsors to get him through the season? Gene Haas has carried the sponsorship, I think, on the 41 right throughout this entire inception, and I understand CNC is a really big company, and that right, it's no different than Hendrick Cars. Just like Hendrick has sponsored Larson and carried his sponsorship. So, here we are. One piece of the domino has fallen. There is several more pieces to go. If Eric Amarola, since we're talking about Stewart Haas Racing, we understand Chase Briscoe has a long-term deal. They've got to make major changes there. Something's just terribly wrong. Priest ran really good at Nashville. He ran in the top 20 the whole race. It's crazy I say top 20, and that's really good. But that's how kind of pretty bad that Stewart Haas is this year. That's where Stewart Haas is right now. Yeah. Right. So, and of course the uncertainty with. I feel like the longer we go not knowing about Eric Amarola, the more I'm kind of like into it that he's going to return, because I think that, it would be a pretty important piece to know that there's a chair open at Stewart Haas Racing going into this, the long stretch into the second half of the season. Deals like to be done by September. I'm sorry, it's already July. It may be a couple of days left on the calendar in June, but it's here, right? That means you got 2 months to get a deal done. And, knowing what seats are open and what seats are available is important. And we should hear something pretty soon about the future of Eric Amarola. So
I guess, is there anything else we need to cover on the Stewart-Haas racing? I know the performance side has been quite iffy. We could take some speculation on who could be the replacement of Eric Almirola. I think we've covered that, like Zane Smith, Michael McDowell, or, fill in the blank. So,
yeah.
how about – go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was going to the next topic. I'm glad you're teeing up.
No, go ahead.
Okay, so Ryan Blaney, I guess. That's the next subject of discussion.
Oh,
Ryan Blaney hits the inside wall pretty hard. And,
I
of course,
got
when the day and age of safety, I bet you do. It is almost redundant, I hope I used that correctly, that we have a situation where there is not soft walls on any part of a racetrack. Miss Lee, go ahead.
Why did they not at least have tires there? I don't care that it's an inside wall. I don't care that it's got a curve to it. There is absolutely no reason to at least have if you can't put safer barrier there for whatever reason, why were there not at least a tire barrier or water barrels or something? That was just outrageous. For all the advances that we have made safety-wise in NASCAR, what the heck went wrong?
I mean, it's cost saving, but I don't agree with it. I have this theory that any place that you point to on the racetrack, if you say that a car can't go there, I'm going to bet you $100 it will.
They're going to go
and
there.
I guarantee you, I'm going to win $100.
Yeah, no, there is no excuse. Used tire barriers are not that expensive. Water barrels are not that expensive. There should be something there, period.
Do you think the grass had anything to do with how hard the hit was, or?
Well, yeah, because it skidded right across it.
Right.
So that might have added some speed. I don't think it slowed him down. I think it might have added speed. Grass is slick.
Right. Yeah, so we've seen a lot of these places take the grass out. Even Martinsville, right? I mean, what was, you go back and watch some of the races of old, and the skirting, the infield skirting had grass. Well, that's all been taken away now, and concrete's been added, or asphalt's been added. Charlotte, they have a type of turf down. Of course, what we've seen with Carl. Oh, what the hell is wrong with me? Carl Edwards running through the infield, I believe, at Charlotte in an all-star event, and it ate the front end of his race car. So, maybe that's where they messed up. Like they thought, okay, it's not going to be that much speed based off of where the corner is. It's really it's no forgiveness, right? I mean, the fact of it is, Miss Lee, is there was a vulnerability. There was a vulnerable spot left open, and it could have put a driver's life and career in jeopardy. And anytime these drivers step up and say something to the sanctioning body about their safety, I don't feel any need to argue their point at all.
Like I said, it's not that expensive to put in tire barriers or water barrels. There should be something there, period.
Amen.
There's Taz. That's Taz. Taylor, glad to have you back. Hopefully everything's all good on your end. Look, I'm not even lying to y'all. An hour and a half ago, we were sitting in the dark. We had a fuse go bad in our main fuse box, and my wife was in the middle of cooking supper, and everything just went dead. So I ran outside, and I flipped the fuse box, and it started making this crazy sound, and then everything died. And so we sat here for 2 hours and waited on the electrician to get here, and thank goodness they got it fixed, and where they were able to get our electricity back on for now. But we do have to replace a couple of parts tomorrow. So, amen, hallelujah. It would have been terrible if Miss Lee would have been here by herself. We don't know how really close that was.
Dang.
Amen. All right, so we were talking about the Stuart Haas situation, and we kind of left that on the table with Josh Berry and obviously maybe the open seat with Eric Amarola. Then we bounced to the Ryan Blaney wreck and the lack of inner wall, safety wall, and or tires, cushions, anything to that effect. We also covered the fact that there is a grassy stretch in that area, Taylor, which could have added to the out-of-controlness and or speed at the rate that he hit the wall at. I for one, did not – I only heard it in my ears. I did not get to sit down until about 100 laps to go and finish the race. So I actually missed that part. But I'm going to tell y'all right now, the race that I did watch at 4 o'clock in the morning on Sunday morning was the Xfinity race, and I said, I be damn, y'all. There is going to be a race with a wreck every 5 laps just so I can't go to freaking sleep. And I be damn. If there wasn't we didn't get home from the track until 2 o'clock in the morning, so I turned the race on. And normally I would typically go to sleep, right? I would just fall asleep. But hell no. That was a wreck. And it was on the edge of the seat. Interesting. Like, I loved it. Like, I wasn't like, oh, my God, it's just a freaking Rick fest, Miss Lee. No, I was quite the opposite. I was on the edge of my seat. These guys were literally out of control.
Yeah, they couldn't start the race for nothing.
What do you think that was? I had a theory with my son at 4 o'clock in the morning on Sunday morning as we were watching this Xfinity race that would not go away. That asphalt, that concrete was so hot it was just like glass, and these cars were spinning out because there was no grip. That's what we used to like about racing, was it not, Taz Taylor?
It was. I will say the beginning part of the racing was not bad at all. It was more, I guess you could say it was more wild than what we have been seeing. I don't know if it's because it's the Fox curse or whatever, but I'll kind of keep away from the broadcast side of things. But anyways, but no, I thought the racing all in all, start to finish, had its good moments. I thought the battles for the lead at times with Reddick and Chastain, and then Hamlin and Truex when they got going, when they got it up front. When they got up front, it was entertaining there. It sucked that Reddick not really wrecked out, but kind of lost his tire, and that costed his race. But because I would have enjoyed seeing 3 Toyotas versus Chastain, or if maybe Reddick could get a win on the oval. I mean, as far as I know of, it seems like where Reddick has his groove going on the ovals is where the bad luck strikes in, and where he runs on road courses where his good luck strikes. And man, Reddick, let me tell you, he's a force to be reckoned with. And RCR lost out on a guy, on a huge talent, and Denny Hamlin's got a bright star ahead of him. But
yeah, for sure.
I think
take a lot of us, man.
But I think Chastain was basically the man of the weekend. I mean, he was up there, one of the fastest in practice, if not the fastest. Qualifying, obviously, he got the pole. He won a stage, I believe. And then, hey, he got the job done. And it wasn't, and I don't want to say it was Ross Chastain's domination. I don't think it was. I pretty much believe it was Ross versus Toyota. Because Hendrick in the last 2 years have won the Nashville races, Chase Elliott and Kyle Larson. But they were not lead contenders. They weren't battling for the lead. Yeah, they ran like top 5, top 10, but not one when they just were not Hendrick form that we're used to seeing for most of these past weeks. And I believe Chastain capitalized on that moment, and he was right there. And, of course, Toyota with JGR, Hamlin and Truex specifically, and then Reddick before he had his issues, they're all top guns. And it's funny that I say that because, like I said, we're always talking about Hendrick. This week we're not really talking about him. We're talking about somebody else.
Yeah, definitely. The Toyotas were dominant. Ross Chastain wins. The Keselowski Fords were fast. Eric Jones out of left field. How about that? Eric Jones, I think a solid top 10 finish.
Yeah, but a solid top 15, what we should be talking about with Eric Jones? Shouldn't we be seeing top 10s, top 5s?
Yeah, and I think we will, Miss Lee. I think a lot of eggs are in the basket for the future of Toyota. Toyota found out that they were literally hanging on the strings of Joe Gibbs Racing. And at any point in time, Joe Gibbs could have entertained an offer from another manufacturer and just basically stuck TRD without a legitimate manufacturer. I think that they are taking this golden opportunity where Jimmy Johnson's bringing in a whole lot of people. They've seen the success of RFK already. They've looked at the long-term success that Stuart Haas has had, and so they're going to be able to, basically mold and make sure this thing into a top-level program. I also believe that there may be some help coming, right? The last thing, Reagan said, the last thing you ever want to hear is your government say help is coming, right? But in Jimmy Johnson's situation, help is coming could come in the name of Michael Andretti. There are now talks again that Andretti has shown interest into getting a NASCAR team. We've also, it's a great time to mention this about Joe Gibbs Racing. Joe Gibbs Racing actually sold a minority stake to. Well, can we get that real quick, Jamie? Can we get that article sent? Taz, do you have, can you pull that up? I don't know if y'all got the Joe Rogan reference, but you gotta listen to Joe Rogan. There was actually a sale. So this is like a merger. This is a sale. This is, I believe, an investment firm that Joe Gibbs has now sold a minority stake of Joe Gibbs Racing to this group of investors, and in return, he now has received ownership in an NBA team and I believe an NHL team through this same firm.
Right.
It's just very, very interesting, and it should show us the signs and the times of, well, there's only a limited amount of charters to buy, so how many people can we cram on this ticket? And I think that that's going to be the route that you see Junior Motorsports go when they come up to Cup racing. We've seen how Denny Hamlin's team is kind of a sideshow of Joe Gibbs Racing, but at the same time they have Curtis Polk and Michael Jordan who's calling the shots. Denny Hamlin's no longer relying on Joe Gibbs for a pit crew, so there is some separation. But I believe what's happened here is as I said before, Toyota figured out that all their eggs were in one basket, and they needed to have multiple satellites. And I feel like Eric Jones is in a catbird seat for this new arrangement coming next year, Miss Lee.
And for what it's worth, part of what Joe Gibbs got in that deal was a part ownership in the Washington Commanders. And is that not the team that Joe Gibbs coached?
Yes.
I could be wrong. I don't know.
Yes.
I don't follow football that much.
Yes.
But
it was the Washington Redskins that are now known as the Washington Commanders, which there is an issue with that as well. Yeah. Because do you have that article pulled up yet?
Check the feed.
I've got an article here. Says the deal announced Tuesday said Joe Gibbs Racing has received a significant investment from Harris Blitzer Sports and Entertainment for the minority stake in the team. Gibbs, meanwhile, will become a limited partner in Harris Blitzer Sports and Entertainment, pending approval by the NBA and NHL. Blitzer owns the 76ers, the NHL's New Jersey Devils, and Josh Harris, the founder, is the head of the ownership group for the Commanders. So, basically, Coach Joe is diversifying.
Right. Protecting his investment for later on. And that could open the door, of course, for somebody else to buy into the Joe Gibbs race team. And what we're seeing here is not unprecedented. We've seen it with Fenway years ago, right? Fenway, of course, comes from Boston. The guy by the name of John Henry owns the Boston Red Sox, where that became the name Roush Fenway Racing. So, these investment firms have become a popularity. If anybody's been following the Live Golf Tour, you kind of probably have your own opinion on how these investment firms run and what they're utilized for. But, hey, it's an opportunity for Joe Gibbs Racing to grow and possibly, be a mainstay in NASCAR for a very long time, at least even if it's just a small piece later on down the road. Because the big question mark with Joe Gibbs Racing, I think we all know this, Joe Gibbs is up in age. He's done lost both of his sons, and his grandson is a racer. So there's a lot hanging on the line here. If Ty Gibbs is not successful as a racer, I think Joe Gibbs has really put a lot into getting his grandson in NASCAR. You could see an organization like Richard Childress with Austin Dillon at the head of the helm. You would see a similar situation happen at Joe Gibbs Racing. Y'all's thoughts on what we are here, and I'll start with you, Taz.
You mentioned the family ties and when it comes to teams and stuff like that, and how you mentioned RCR with Austin Dillon. I honestly feel like Gibbs may have a better hand with Ty Gibbs versus Childress with Austin Dillon. Only because in the fact that, yes, Ty right now is a rookie, and last year he was kind of just thrown into a car just to fill in for Kurt Busch. But I feel like he's found more of his stride than Austin Dillon right now, or at least for this year anyways. I don't know if it's really the new car or if it's Austin Dillon just doesn't have the talent, and Ty Gibbs has talent, just needs to kind of mature and develop. I don't entirely know where to pinpoint it, but it just seems like Gibbs has the formula. He just needs to find, I guess, the drivers. But that could be this whole next-gen car be more equal and whatnot, because Gibbs really, if Ty gets better in his performance, we could easily see all 4 Gibbs cars running up front week in, week out. And that wasn't the case before. It was always Kyle Busch and Martin Truex Jr. or Denny Hamlin, and then that 4th car was kind of like you didn't really talk about it much, unless it won a race. Pretty basically,
the redheaded stepchild.
And yeah, we've sat here and said many times that we don't like people, and even Tony Stewart has made this comment. We don't like people that come into the sport buying their way in instead of earning their way in. But I hate saying this, but I feel like Ty Gibbs could be the long-term investment in Joe Gibbs Racing, and I feel like RCR shot themselves in the foot of trying to long-term invest in their in Austin Dillon when they could have long-term invested into Tyler Reddick. And now, with Kyle Busch in the fray, maybe RCR can sit here and say, okay, we have Kyle Busch for maybe another 5 years. So who do we look at through not only the KBM deal, but also through the RCR deal? And this is kind of tying back into what earlier of what you guys talked about with the SHR deal of who comes into play. Well, honestly, Austin Hill, and this isn't really much of a RCR thing, I should say SHR. But I mentioned in the chat that Suarez, is not running as well as he was last year. And I feel like if we put a different driver in the 99 car, will we see the same kind of performance as Suarez has been doing, or will we see better? And I feel like Trackhouse could be a serious threat if they had that 99 car running up front, and they could focus on that Project 91 car, maybe turning it into maybe a third full-time ride. And I feel like RCR, if they don't invest long-term into somebody, they're going to lose another prospect. They lost Tyler Reddick. They could possibly lose Austin Hill, in my opinion. So I feel like Gibbs. So I feel like right now Gibbs, with his investment, it may pay off. I know there have been, I know Hamlin and Truex have weighed in their comments, and I haven't looked to see what their comments are, but I honestly think in terms of long-term investment, if we're going to throw family into the mix, I feel like Gibbs may have a better shot than Childress with Austin Dillon. And yes, I'm shooting myself in the foot for that one, and I hate saying it.
Yeah, Ty Gibbs has showed that he's got a little bit of talent in him. But so did Austin Dillon and Ty Dillon, both in the Xfinity Series. It's the only time will tell. I think as an organization all around, Ty Gibbs definitely with a better organization than what Richard Childress was at the time that Kevin Harvick left, when Austin Dillon kind of took over as the lead guy. Of course, Ryan Newman, I think, was still in the 31 at the time. But you brought up some interesting points there, Ted. Miss Lee?
I think that the team owners are finally facing reality and that they're not going to be around for forever.
Right.
And they're trying to do what they can to keep their teams going. But, well, what it boils down to is NASCAR isn't what it was 50 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
And
My boy.
so they have to try to diversify and do what they can to keep their legacies going.
Right.
By the same token,
Hendrick and Gordon.
Right.
Very good.
But by the same token, is this going to dilute the NASCAR that we know and love? Because where is that legacy? You don't have that legacy anymore.
Yeah, it's more like a timeshare program, right, Miss Lee?
Yeah, that is a good analogy, Chris.
It is. It really is. And we've seen this back in the middle 2000s, if y'all remember real quick, again, and the merger with like Evernham and Richard Petty Motorsports and Ginn and Earnhardt, along with Chip Ganassi. So we've seen these multiple players jump into this ownership role before, and of course it fanned out and it was back to normal again. What's your thoughts, Taz?
Well, I was just thinking, and you guys may agree, maybe you guys don't. But before this Kyle Busch move, right, I've always played into my head that that with the whole Hendrick and Gordon thing, it basically says if once Hendrick either decides to basically leave the racing world in general, or when he finally, moves on in life, Jeff Gordon is basically his right-hand man, will basically take over Hendrick Motorsports. So I've sat here for a while, and I've thought to myself, who else is in that deal? And if before Kyle Busch, before the talks of last year with Kyle Busch and JGR, I'm sitting here like, Kyle Busch could basically be the next guy to take over for JGR if nobody within the family falls in line, because Kyle Busch, with his truck team, was basically a feeder system for Joe Gibbs and Xfinity and Cup. So,
right.
And when you looked at, and I hate to throw in some virtual stuff in this, but when you look in the esports side of things, when you put Joe Gibbs into the table, the numbers were always 18 and 51. Who's associated with both of those numbers? Kyle Busch.
Kyle Busch.
So it made you think, okay, maybe Kyle Busch can step into the Joe Gibbs deal at some point down the line. Well, now that's not happening. So now timetable changes. We're still in the Hendrick Jeff Gordon deal. Now we got Keselowski involved with Roush. So it makes you think, okay, once Roush goes or steps away, Keselowski is basically the guy to take over. RCR, in my opinion, should lean on Kyle Busch because of the fact that Kyle Busch has a truck team. He's going to bring prospects for you. Kyle Busch obviously brings an insane amount of talent and a number of years experience. Sure. And now it's obviously Stuart Haas is in it for a little while. So it makes you think some of these other teams, like, who is their next falling in line, And
but who does Stuart Haas have to step up and take over the reins.
Tony's still got 40 years.
You could do a Stuart Harvick situation if you wanted to.
Yeah, Tony's not going anywhere. Hell, he's got so many different outlets. It's crazy. And I think Leah won this weekend on the drag side, the drag racing side.
Yeah, but Tony ain't going to be around forever either.
Right. No, that's very true.
I think it's too early to kind of predict where Tony's going. I mean, when we talk, I feel like we're now at the point of. I mean, we also have to think about Penske too, because we now have to sit here and think Hendrick, Gibbs, Rouse, those guys have been in it for decades. Now we got to find the next generation of owners.
And they're all old men. You know, who is going to carry on the legacy of each team, regardless of who their grandkids are or who their primary drivers are? Who is going to carry their vision? Who is going to carry their legacy?
Right.
And what does that mean for the future of NASCAR?
Yep. So it's interesting with the Jeff Gordon thing, because of course Rick Hendrick had a son, Ricky, but unfortunately, he passed away in a plane crash, and I think that's kind of opened the door for a Jeff Gordon to eventually take the enterprise of a Rick Hendrick Motorsports.
Right. And where does that leave Coach Joe with his boys gone?
Right. Yeah, that's the question. That's the $1 million question.
Hey,
where does Joe Gibbs go from anymore? Right. That was a great point, as on how we kind of all, and I think had Joe Gibbs had a crystal ball, he probably would have done things different with Kyle. Maybe not. But, you have to wonder how much of that decision was actually left out of Joe Gibbs' hands and more by what the corporation and whole of Joe Gibbs Racing was looking for at the time. That was before the passing of Coy.
Right.
Or JD.
And
it was
how
Coy,
much,
yes. Coy.
And how much did the loss of Mars as a sponsor play into that, too?
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So Carl Edwards at one time was offered ownership into Roush Racing. And instead, Ford stepped up and gave him some options from the actual Ford company. Well, he obviously got out of that and went to Toyota to race for them for a year. And we know the story of Carl after that. Now, it is interesting, as we move on to our next subject, I want to talk about the broadcasting, but you can't talk about the broadcasting without mentioning the fact that Carl Edwards made an appearance at Nashville.
I think Carl finally got the balls up and told his wife he wants to race again.
Or just be a part of the racing culture. I'm not sure. I think he pretty much said he wasn't up for a return and didn't think it was fair to have a one-off. Now, we've heard this a few times, and I wonder if it's been a slander to Jimmy Johnson about this one-off situation. But I feel like he pretty much set in stone that he wasn't and had no intentions of returning to the racing side. Excellent broadcaster. He had me hanging on the seat. I listened to him over on the PRN side with Doug Rice, and he even did a great job on that side. So I'm not sure how much TV time he actually got.
He didn't
but I was
get
able.
much.
But he was there with quite a bit on the.
I would like to have him in the broadcast booth if he were to go back somewhere in the racing world. If it's not racing, I would like to see him in the broadcast booth. But I would like to see him on the truck series side because, I mean, yeah, you've got the color character of Michael Waltrip, but, I mean, how many more years do we have of Michael Waltrip? I'm trying to think of somebody else in that. Who else is in that commentary?
Mike Joy.
Yeah, Mike
there
Joy.
needs to be a new lead of Mike Joy, but I don't know who that guy would be right now. And
Alan Bestwick. I mean, duh.
If he chooses.
Yeah, I guess you're right. Lee Diffie. That would turn everybody upside down if a British guy got the lead role. Wait a minute, it's happened before at ESPN and he got fired, or was it NBC? I think it was NBC Sports, as a matter of fact. He got fired.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, Carl would be good in the booth. There's no doubt about it. He's never raced this particular car, so I'd have to see him get in it for at least a race to be actually able to say what's going on with this car.
Yeah.
I don't want to see. You mentioned that, but the question raises, has Clint Boyer been in one of these cars?
No.
No, you have a point, but Clint didn't retire as long ago as Carl did. So he's a little more up to date.
Right. Well, he was a part of the design of the car. He was there when they were piecing this car together. So I can kind of get that side of it. Let's move on. What about the broadcasting itself from NBC? We switched over from Fox to NBC. We got Dale Jr. and Jeff Burton screaming in the microphone. But then we got Steve Letarte. Rick Allen. Yeah, oh, my God. Please, you know what I'm talking about. Take it, Taz.
Well, as much flavor and entertaining as those two are, Burton and Dale Jr. in the commentator booth, why in the freaking hell would you have them, two of the most colorful and entertaining commentators you have, why would you put them trackside where when the cars zoom by them, you can barely hear anything they freaking goddamn say?
Because they get both high-pitched and get on everybody's damn nerves, so they did exactly what they needed to do. I mean, y'all didn't realize that the damn broadcast was so much more crystal clear when you didn't have Dale Jr. and Jeff Burton with their high-pitched voices saying, ah! That's the way it sounds. So I thought it was kind of funny. I thought somebody from the inside was like, here, put them down in there. You'll never hear a word from them because it'll be cars all over the Speedway. That's exactly what happened. You couldn't hear nothing. And then kudos to Dale Earnhardt for just laughing it off.
I am extremely disappointed in NBC coverage so far this year. It irritates me to the point where I'm going to put the radio on. I don't know if MRN or PRN has the radio this weekend, but I'm putting the radio on. I'll watch, but I'm putting the radio on.
Hey, it's cool. I've been doing it too. And it's a lot better broadcast because I thought Fox's broadcast got horrible. Oh, yeah?
MRN to answer your question, Lee.
Thank you.
Well, and it's going to be a road course race there. You guarantee them MRN boys, they'll give you a broadcast worth listening to.
Absolutely.
All right, well, I think we've gotten through some of the topics. Does anybody else have anything to add?
I want to talk about Sheldon Creed and his
Good.
penalty this weekend.
So action's detrimental, right? A behavioral penalty.
Right.
Anybody know what he did?
He talked on the radio that if Sammy Smith got too close to his door again, he was going to turn. And that is what got him his penalty. Not the action on the racetrack, but what he said on the radio. And that is the topic I wanted to discuss. Why are we basing these penalties on what people are saying on the radio rather than the actual action on the track? Because if you look at the actual wreck, it may or may not have been intentional. But NASCAR went back to what Creed said on his radio and said, yep, you're getting a penalty.
Yeah, I just think it's bullshit. I mean, boys have at it, but don't say anything on the radio and keep it incognito, and you can't have any after the race. I mean, just go ahead and put your hand down and say this is Formula freaking One.
Yeah, it's crazy. You know, we all say things in the heat of the moment that we don't necessarily mean. And maybe he meant it, maybe he didn't. Maybe he was just angry at the moment. But
remember, we're parking drivers now for this, and that's just,
exactly.
I understand wrecking somebody in a straightaway is not the right thing to do. There's a time and a place, but Jesus, it's like we're nitpicking now, and that's just, I mean, let guys vent, and if something happens on the racetrack, when are you going to say, well, you can't retaliate anymore? What's good and what ain't good? That's the problem I'm running into. What's good and what ain't good? When are you supposed to retaliate? Like, for real.
Yeah.
Like, so now you just let people run you over? Now you're like what school's like now, so you can't protect yourself. You have to sit there and get your ass beat because you're afraid you're going to get suspended instead of throwing freaking hands? I mean, that's the box they're putting these drivers in. And that eventually leads to bullying.
And that's the point I wanted to bring up was, where do you draw the line? You're saying boys have at it and let these guys race each other, but yet you're going to turn around and penalize them for something they said on the radio, which, like I said, may or may not have been intentional. Maybe it was just heat of the moment. This is getting too PC.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Yes, safety is a concern. There is no doubt about that. But come on. That's like you going back through my Facebook history and finding something that I said 10 years ago that offends you.
Right.
Come on.
Right, and 10 years ago, it was a lot different atmosphere than it is now. I'm so over the offended me shit as well, but you're right, Miss Lee. This goes back to short track racing and drivers being able to defend themselves. And, basically, we complain all the time that drivers are so vanilla. But the moment that we get drivers who are willing to make a show, we want to penalize these guys because they're acting outside character of what NASCAR expects these guys to do. But yet we still have a policy that says boys have at it. Just change the policy, NASCAR. Change the policies. Tell us that it's not boys have at it, that if these fenders so much as touch each other and somebody has a crossword over the radio with another teammate, that they're going to sit them down for 3 weeks and they're going to have to buy them pacifiers. So, because, you're treating them like babies. That's not racist.
Now you're telling these drivers that they can't communicate with their crew chiefs in an honest, frank manner because they got to police themselves. And, obviously, I don't know what it's like in the cockpit of the car.
Huh?
But, I know that they're hot, they're tired, they're angry, whatever. And so they're going to say shit. But, I don't know.
You're putting them out there at 160 degrees out there on that concrete, and they're upset because a driver got a little hot over the head. Seriously, that's what stock car racing is. This is not Formula One where we're trying to do 220 through the corner. Okay? This is short track racing. This is, mile and a half speedway. This is a concrete, facility, right? So the cars are slipping and sliding. It's crazy. But what it's saying is drivers have got to be a lot more careful about what they say on the radio, Miss Lee. Things are going to get like baseball where everything has to be coded.
Exactly, and that's what's pissing me off.
That's what it's turned into. Everything's going to have to be coded. Speaking of CODA, it's hot as hell out here. I need a cola. Let's talk about this weekend, Chicagoland. I don't know if anybody really thought that this would be a topic of discussion here tonight, but we've got enough time to squeeze it in before we get to Taz's hot picks. Expectations. Seems like this has been nothing but a roadblock from the beginning. I think that we're all just as surprised that this race is actually going to happen. I think that from the moment it was announced, I said this race will never happen. So if I had to pay that back, I guess I'd be paying in full. But it is not like we haven't heard a million things of why it shouldn't happen. What are the expectations rolling into the Chicago street race? And we'll start with you, Taz. The table is open as long as it's about Chicago street racing.
Well, I've seen NASCAR street races because of the Pinty series. I'm not sure if anybody else does. I'm sure the Euro and Mexico series does them, but I've never watched them. But anyway, from what I've gathered, it's going to be a narrow course, but that does not mean you will not see passing. It does not mean you'll see, beat bang. I do think with the layout, there may be a couple spots for passing by the looks of it. And so, street races, we've never seen Cup cars on the streets ever, obviously. And the only reason why I referenced the Pinty series is, and then this is not the first time I've referenced Pinty's with the Cup series, because the next gens kind of almost resemble a Pinty Series car in some sort of sense. So I feel like we will see some Pinty Series street racing type of deal. Maybe we won't. I don't know. My mind is open to it. I see it as NASCAR's probably going to give this a one-shot deal. If fans are good with it, we'll keep it for the next year. If not, well,
it's a 3-year deal, Tess. Whether or not we see all 3 years, of course, is the question. But it is a 3-year deal.
Yeah. I'm kind of hoping we get a good product. If we don't, I kind of hope they take that 3-year deal and rip it out, put it in the shredder, and never look at it again.
So now you're telling the truth. You don't want this race to happen. You don't like the idea of this race. You've already pooped on this race, and it hasn't even happened. But you don't want to say that because you don't want to be biased. You don't want to be against something that you haven't watched yet. And in the end, Taz, we could be surprised. I'm right there with you on everything. But the one thing that I'll keep open to the fact is I've been critical before, and I've ate those words. Are you ready to eat those words? What if this winds up being the coolest race we've ever seen? I mean, these are stock cars that are going to be racing through the streets or something. Isn't this more – I mean, tell me how many rednecks wanted to go and race their hillbilly hot rods in the streets of New York City. I mean, come on. It's got to be something cool about this because I'll be honest, I've heard nothing but negativity from everything and everywhere about this upcoming race.
Like I said, I'm giving it a shot. I'm not putting it in the toilet completely yet because I've seen Pinty Series races. Some of them are pretty good if you look on like YouTube or Flow. Like I said, it's going to be a narrow course. Like obviously we've seen road course races. Like the track is, you could go to maybe 3 wide in certain instances. Yeah. And I'm not referencing Dakota either. Dakota's just a madhouse in its own right. But I mean, like the street course is pretty narrow. You're going to have 2 wide racing from time to time, but you're not going to see crazy 3 wide nonsense. You're going to see beat and bang in some of these corners. Drivers are going to have to really going to have their awareness abilities be really tested because, I mean, some of these 90-degree turns, they can be blinding corners.
Right.
They're going to play as blinding corners. So if a car goes around about 50 feet after a 90-degree turn, you either better react quick like hell or hold on to your steering wheel.
I have heard some of this about how sharp some of these corners are and how it could be leading up to a pretty bad accident. I mean, I'm excited there. Go ahead, Taz, finish it up.
All I'm saying is my mind is open. I'll give it a whirl. I've obviously told you what I have seen. And I'll leave it at that. I'm not putting this on the golden shelf, but I'm not burying it in the ground yet.
All right, Miss Lee, what's your thoughts on the upcoming Chicago
race?
Race?
I got some big opinions, guys.
All right.
I am not opposed. I am not opposed to street racing. I think it's a good idea. I think it's a good new thing to bring into NASCAR. I don't think Chicago was the right place to do it.
Bingo.
safety of the drivers, crews, and fans is my big thing. You know, Chicago is and I'll put a quarter in the swear jar, Chicago's a shit show.
Yeah.
I don't think that it was the right place to necessarily do this for the first time. That said, I got a lot of questions. You know, you're talking about a course that has multiple surfaces, asphalt, concrete. It has
little gravel,
potential hazards, manholes.
Wow, I didn't even think about that.
Manholes.
And these are a lot.
Yeah.
These cars
Not
are a lot heavier than
but,
an Indy car or a Formula One car. What if these manholes come up? Holy crap, Miss Lee! What if simulation hasn't picked up on that?
And one of my big concerns is with this new car, you've got those solid bottoms.
Right.
How are they going to handle the differences not only between the road surfaces, but such things as manholes and pits and whatnot in the road surface? Something that Drew Blickensdorfer mentioned today was, you know, you've got garbage trucks and whatnot that have left oil slicks all over the road. And, you know, I mean, yeah, they're going to clean it up, but some of that stuff is really soaked into the surface.
Yeah,
so
good point.
Something that Drew mentioned is how important the track walk prior to the race is going to be to address all of those issues. And I do really wonder how that new hard underbody is going to be affected by that.
You mentioned that there, and it also makes me wonder. You mentioned about asphalt, gravel, concrete. And I'm not trying to throw a monkey wrench into this one, and I'm not trying to be the cloud that hangs over this whole situation, but if it rains, how will these rain tires hold up on different surfaces?
Right.
Because we've seen rain tires hold up on a racing surface, but how will we see them on the streets?
Yeah. So, well, that's another point too. Like I said, I am not opposed to street racing. I think that NASCAR neglected to consult with F1, Indy regarding how to run a street race.
But have they reached out to their outside the U.S. border series about that deal?
Well, that I don't know, but I think that NASCAR jumped on having a street race without consulting all of these other series that do them on a regular basis.
Right. Well, I'm sure Penske has put his 2 cents in.
Yeah, but
and probably has something in the rings that's going to actually help that team because of the experience that they have in these style races. And remember, Joey Logano, without a question, should be the favorite for this race, considering the history of Penske Racing and Joey Logano at inaugural events.
exactly.
May I add?
Yep.
But there's,
Yeah,
there's
I
also
agree.
another proponent. Give me 1 second. There's also another proponent in all this. There is wildfires, once again, that has sent smoke haze, this time to Chicago. How about that, guys?
Oh, yeah. Well, I'll tell you what. It was bad here today in Central Ohio, and we have air alerts for the next 3 days. Rain coming this weekend, so the haze might not be so bad. But yeah, that's a factor too.
Wow.
It's funny how.
So is rain
Chris
scheduled
mentioned-
for Chicago? Go ahead, Tess. Go ahead.
Well,
we'll look
no,
at that
I
later.
don't.
Go ahead, Tess.
I don't know about Chicago, but we're supposed to get rain here in Central Ohio this weekend, so I would imagine Chicago will get some too. Not necessarily for the race, but it should help clear the air.
Tess, what were you saying?
You mentioned when you mentioned Penske and Logano, and who may have an advantage. You know, I'm going to throw an underdog team that may have an advantage, and it's very odd to say this, and nobody would have probably ever thought of this, but they used to have a team in the Pinty series where the Pinty series they run short tracks, road courses, street courses. I feel like Rick Ware Racing may have their hands in that.
Oh. Well, is Joey Hand going to be in the car? Because I could see that. I mean, for real. They are a satellite of Stewart-Haas Racing, so if Joey Hand, a Ford development driver, is in the Rick Ware race car.
They're not aligned with Stewart-Haas. I think they're aligned with the front row.
Oh, are they? Wow.
I know they're not with
Ford
they're not a
development.
satellite of Stewart-Haas anymore. I know that. I can't remember what they're a satellite of now.
Okay. I know they're part of
Dang.
Ford development.
Well, they've got Indy, they've got NASCAR. Crap, Rick Ware's got his fingers in all the pies.
And everything.
Rick Ware's got Andy Lally in the 51, Jensen Button in the 15.
Wow,
That's
Jensen Button.
somebody to watch. Is Jensen
Formula
Button.
One. Hell yeah.
Jensen Button.
This is his second. Yeah, this is his second attempt
And
in a NASCAR.
and Trackhouse has they're entering their Project 91 car, and they have Shane Van Gisbergen, if I'm pronouncing that right, a 3-time V8 Supercar champion. And Supercars, we all know, runs these kind of tracks. Just the question is, how much heavier is the stock car versus a V8 Supercar? And if you don't know what a V8 Supercar is, think of your normal street car with a giant frickin' damn wing on the rear end of that car. Think of the biggest wing possible, and that's pretty much it.
You know,
Jensen
Button has not had a whole lot of success in NASCAR, but I would definitely keep an eye on him this weekend.
He doesn't like contact, though. So that was the issue last time that he was in a Cup car. He said that there was a little way too much contact, that he was not used to that. Well, maybe this time he'll be a little bit better prepared on how these boys race in the Cup Series, especially at a place like I think you know, talk about retaliation and whatnot. This is an even playing field race. I expect these guys. I expect action all the way from practice to the race.
I don't know, guys. This is on Race Hub tonight. David Reagan took us through a sim of the racetrack. I'm not so sure. I'm thinking this is going to be a shit show. Another quarter for the swear jar.
I know, we've had a few tonight. Even Taz has got in on it. Oh, we're going to Disney World, y'all. We're going to Disney World. Oh, Lord have mercy. Woo, I don't know about what y'all are, but it is.
I am not opposed to street racing. I just don't think this was well thought.
I just think that the guys better show up with bulletproof vests, and I don't know what the over-under is of bullet holes leaving in the car. So I would figure at least 2 or 3 trunk lids are going to get shot up. I hope not. God, I hope not. Think about the implications of something like that really happening. I really hope that NASCAR goes the extra and beyond, because this is a redneck sport going into the streets of Chicago. There's a lot of negativity given already to NASCAR. We would hate to see a situation happen where our fans, the community, the racers were not safe. It's never happened before, but it has happened in other venues, and so we have to remind ourselves where we are at and what could happen.
And that has been my biggest complaint from the beginning. Why Chicago? There are many other cities that could have handled this, that are much safer. And I'm not being negative or bigoted towards Chicago, but we all know the statistics. And
right.
I just pray to God that everyone, from the teams, the drivers, the fans, that everyone is safe.
Yeah, not to turn this political, but you're taking these guys into a city that has the steepest gun laws in the United States. And so these guys are not going to be able to protect themselves. I hope, like hell, the Chicago Police Department, NASCAR, private security companies have the protection needed that these drivers may need. I mean, as long as there's a big beef of security, I figure nothing will happen whatsoever. But you're bringing a whole lot of people into a place that they've never been before, into a race that's never happened before, in the streets that we've never seen before. And obviously, gangs run certain territories. We don't know. Like, I hate to be the bearer of this, and maybe it's inappropriate to talk about. But I mean, there's the truth.
It is not inappropriate, Chris. That is my main concern. Chicago is one of the worst cities as far as gun violence goes, and you don't necessarily hear about it, but the murder rate in Chicago is outrageous, and the gun violence in Chicago is outrageous. And so I'm just worried about the safety, like I keep saying, of the drivers, the teams, and the fans. I'm afraid that something's going to happen that's not NASCAR related, but something's going to happen, and it's just going to turn into a mess. And I'm praying and hoping that I'm wrong. and I'm praying and I'm hoping for safety for everyone.
Well, I do have a stat of the day, and it has to do with Chicago. But since there's never been a race here before, I had to step out to really find a stat of the week. So, are you guys ready? Here's the drum roll.
Okay.
In 2012, a Chicago man bought a car for $600, registered it in his ex-girlfriend's name, then parked it at O'Hare Airport and racked up 678 parking tickets, totaling the grand total of $105,761.80. That is a day. That is a day. Bop, bop. That is a day. That is a day. Bop, bop. Huh? What do y'all think about that? That is a day.
Yeah, I ain't paying those parking tickets.
Revenge is a dish best served cold. That's it.
Oh, boy. Sorry, I'm trying to get things prepped because I have nothing prepped for Chicago. Huh.
Don't you mess with him. For you. Come here, boy.
IndyCar used to race at in Cleveland at Berks Lakefront Airport.
I was going to say, is it the airport? But as soon as you said Cleveland.
Yep. And that was one of the coolest races. And it was in a major city. It didn't involve shutting down streets. They only did it for a couple of years. But, you know, it was an interesting, different kind of race.
I think we fact-checked it, and it actually went on for almost 15 years, Miss Lee. I think we checked that already, if I'm not mistaken. Look,
Okay.
And coming into the hot topics, I mean the hot picks, Taz, I think anybody that's won a road course race is in this. And I think now is not the time to forget the Michael McDowells, the Chris Bushers, and you kind of build from that, of course. A.J. Allmendinger, Christopher Bell, Martin Truex Jr., Kevin Harvick, William Byron, Kyle Larson, Chase Elliott. Do we have anything to work with this race? No. So, I mean, I'm going to be pissed off at 8 o'clock in the morning when I pick Joey Logano and I get an email back that says he's already been picked. So, there.
Well, obviously, normally, as you guys know, I go off of stats and whatnot. But we don't have that luxury with this. So I kind of have to play by the odds, and where I look at for odds is on actionnetwork.com, because they have they usually pull off odds from BetMGM, FanDuel, Sports or DraftKings, Caesars, BetRivers. Most of them have been released. They're waiting on a few more. So right now they're looking at, and I kind of based my favorite contenders and underdogs off this. I have listed 3 names in each category, as I normally do. So I have listed Chase Elliott, Tyler Reddick, Martin Truex Jr. on the favorites. For contenders, I put William Byron, Christopher Bell, Chris Buescher. Underdogs, I have listed Ty Gibbs, Chase Briscoe, and Ricky Stenhouse. Obviously, there are names that Chris has mentioned that are off the table, but that we are now open to the panel. And Miss Lee, you're getting ready to say.
Yeah. Dinger.
Duh.
Dinger. I'm sorry. This is up his alley. He's got to be a contender.
I mean, he ran pretty well at Sonoma. I was gonna pick Dinger for Sonoma, and then I sat there. I was like, yeah, he's gonna find a way to choke it. And shit you not, he made me eat my words on that one. Sound familiar, Chris?
Most definitely.
Yeah, no, Dinger's got experience that a lot of the NASCAR drivers don't. So I think he absolutely has to be a contender.
Yeah, based off the colleague car, I would have to say a contender more than a favorite. We would not be surprised, but we're not looking at him as a favorite. And eat those words. AJ has a way of making us do that. Who the hell would have thought he won Nashville in the Xfinity race?
Well, we've got 4 contenders. So have 3 favorites, 3 underdogs.
Well, I think Suarez has to be added as an underdog, and Austin Cindric as well.
Oh, definitely. Definitely.
I think Logano deserves the spot. Like you mentioned earlier, him with unique new tracks. I think he should be not necessarily contender, maybe an underdog.
Who are we listing as an underdog?
Logano.
I know Logano's not big on road courses.
He's big on inaugural races.
Yes.
I mean, I have to throw Kyle Larson and Kyle Busch into the favorites category. I mean, they're probably arguably the 2 hottest Chevy drivers outside of William Byron, and you can probably throw Ross Chastain in that mix.
Right.
I don't know.
Kyle Busch.
Larson's not been great lately. So I don't know if I would necessarily put him as a contender. Maybe an underdog. And I'm a Larson fan. So.
Well, if Larson's not going in favorites, we can throw him in contenders because our underdog list is full.
Okay, contender then.
All right, are we feeling okay about Kyle Busch as a favorite at least?
Why not?
He could surprise us. He has so far this year, so.
I would put Kyle Busch in my top 3.
Another person we could wheel into the favorite part if we wanted to. He has won on a road course, and he's actually, I believe he's won on 2 road courses, and he just won Nashville. What about Ross Chastain?
I'm not so sure about that.
Yeah, I think this is more of a place where you're going to see retaliation on Ross. But there again, we're talking about RCR. Earnhardt Childress Racing Motors.
they seem to be stout at places like this. We've seen a good showing from Eric Jones and other drivers at certain tracks, and this road course racing has seemed to be pretty good for the Earnhardt Children's Racing Motor Department with Ross Chastain, Daniel Suarez, several of these drivers that are in ECR motors. They've gotten wins at road courses. So, I mean, I wouldn't be too far off the grid to agree with that.
So are we favorite or contender there, Chris?
Contender for sure.
Contender.
All right. Well, we filled our contenders and underdogs list. Our favorite list is short, but we can leave it like that.
Is Martin Truex Jr. on his favorite?
Oh, yeah.
Because he's really the guy that uses circles. And I
Where do we have Busher?
Busher, I have listed as a contender. He was my top 3 contender to throw in. Couple of names that we have missed is Harvick, as Kristen mentioned. McDowell was a name mentioned earlier. Trying to think of, I know there's a name or two I'm missing that we mentioned earlier. Maybe we didn't. We didn't mention Jensen Button. We didn't mention, or Eric Jones was a name we mentioned and we missed the mark on.
There is another outside guy.
I would consider Button a contender. There's a lot of experience there. I don't see him necessarily winning, but I think he'll do well.
Are we underplaying like a Ryan Preece or a Ty Gibbs even?
I'm not throwing Ty Gibbs out the door. I put him as an underdog, top underdog, nonetheless. Ryan Preece, I don't know. I'm trying to remember, how did he do at Sonoma?
Preece does well on road courses, but I don't know.
I know Preece is a short track racer.
But a lot of
I'm not sure about road courses.
But a lot. If you remember Marcus Ambrose, he was a road course racer, but he would also contend at places like Bristol and stuff. So I feel like there is some kind of similarity between road course racing and short track racing. I think a lot of it has to do with entry of the corner. So maybe that helps kind of process over. But I always remember Marcus Ambrose doing really good at places like Bristol and Martinsville, if y'all remember that.
Oh, yeah, true. That's a good point.
Yeah.
I mean, shoot, I think this would have been a good mark for a Cup team to try to freaking grab Helio Castroneves on this freaking deal. If we're just going to throw names out there.
Right. It's a crapshoot. We ain't never done this before. We're just going to have to wait and see.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it, y'all. I know I didn't really put my opinion in on what's happening here with the Chicago race. I do like first-timers. I'm always intrigued when we do something new. I feel like that was NASCAR's post-COVID business model was, if you think it, we can do it. And I think that this falls into that, and that's where
I think we've thought about it once before. Well, we're showing that we can do it. And whether or not it's going to be a hit, one way we'll find out. You know, we got to go racing. Do I have expectations? No. I mean, of course not. I mean, I just hope, like, my only thing is I hope everybody's safe. Like, I hope we end this thing without a hitch, you know, without anything going wrong. That's my biggest concern, whether or not. No. Who's riding with you? See, and this is the problem. Okay, I'm in the middle of a show, right? Okay, thank you. Okay, Mama said yeah. Well, then Mama needs to get in the car and go ride with y'all because this boy ain't got a driver's license yet. He's only got a permit. And I'm still doing a show. This is live. I appreciate it.
So we'll see just what this turns out to be. And, you know, like I said, safety is my biggest concern. I think NASCAR could have done this better, but we'll see how it goes. I think it's going to be exciting. I think it's going to be fun. But, you know, again, safety is my number one concern.
In this day and age of throwaway, I can kind of see why NASCAR wants to, you know, go to a venue like this. That way, you know, they take it down and it's over with. Unlike building a new racetrack that races 10 years and then all of a sudden goes defunct, similar to what Kentucky Speedway and other broken promises of NASCAR California Speedway.
I was gonna say, I kind of feel like, obviously NASCAR's been in Chicagoland for years. We haven't met in, obviously we haven't ran at Chicagoland Speedway in a few years now, and obviously there's a NASCAR fan base out there, and people have been wanting NASCAR to return to Chicagoland, you know. And I feel like NASCAR is kind of like, well, we'll go back to Chicago to fulfill that fan base that's out there. Well, let's try something different. And voila, we got a street course. And I think they got the market, but the question is, did they get the good race replacement? I'm going to go out there and say no, but I'll eat my words if I'm wrong.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you, Taz. If we're going to race in Chicago, we should race in Chicagoland. It was a good racetrack. It always had its own style racing. It's a lot like Homestead.
Right.
We never saw the same race twice. Kentucky, understandable. Crap racing never really was a good place to go. Nothing around it. So, you know, I understand. But, you know, we're talking about Chicagoland. It was a great facility. And just trading this off for the, you know, it is what it is. I expect success. I won't settle for anything less. My expectations are stagnant, I guess, at this point in time. Like, I'm just wanting to get through this, and we'll be able to tell everybody about what we see next week on Race Chat Live. Look, we got about 10 minutes. I feel like we've covered everything we need to cover. You know, it's did you guys catch any? What did y'all do on your off week?
I unfortunately had to put my dog down.
Oh, damn. Dad, please bail me out of this one. Damn, I'm sorry, Miss Lee. I forgot.
My usual, you know, come home, get dinner done, and kids to bed for. I think last week was their final week of school up here.
So I'm sure I'll get in trouble for sharing a little bit too much information, but my wife got on to me because I haven't been doing a continuous streak of the shows, and so she has somehow gotten behind on her waxing because she uses the time that I'm doing the show to do her waxing. So if that's ever been the case for you, Taz Taylor,
She is going to kick your ass.
No, because she never listens to the show. She's not in here right now. So.
Well, then I'll kick your ass for her.
Well, let me bend over. Guys, it's been a great night. Glad to have y'all. Looking forward to what we can get out of the Chicago race. I'm expecting some news. I expect the ball to start rolling with the Martin Truex Jr., Eric Amarola possibilities of retirement. I don't know why Martin Truex Jr. would announce his retirement right now. I just do not see that happening. Whether or not he is going to be a Joe Gibbs Racing, I think that's the question. I mean, maybe Johnny Morris decides that he wants to put all of his money into one organization, and you see Martin Truex Jr. sign a long-term deal with Stewart-Haas Racing, and we make Stewart-Haas Racing great again. Maybe that's in the plans. Maybe that's what the future might hold. It would be really cool to see Martin Truex in a Ford. I think we've seen him in everything but a Ford.
Martin's not going to retire now. He's left his relationship with Sherry behind, and he's ready to go do what he wants to do. We're going to see things from Martin that we haven't seen.
Like we said right here on Race Chat Live. Strong words, Miss Lee. Strong words. Taylor, you take the hook, man. Get us out of here.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for listening along to Race Chat Live here on Blog Talk Radio. If you ever miss a live show, you can always catch us on any form of podcast, such as Blog Talk Radio, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Spreaker, RSS Feed, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, GeoSavin, Podcast Addict, Deezer, Podchaser, and on YouTube. Speaking of YouTube, go subscribe to the 110 Nation Sports YouTube channel. There's content such as There's Only One Nation. You'll hear clips of not only our show, but the Wednesday night 110 Nation Sports show with Mr. CJ and Mario from Carolina Sports Plus. You'll also see other different videos as well as the 110 Nation tries to expand and grow to other platforms as well. We want to thank our sponsors as well, Bears Bullish Market, Carolina Sports Plus, Yellow Caution Flag Productions, More to Music, Karaoke, and Entertainment, TNT Designs. And with that being said, we'll see you the same bat time, same bat place next Tuesday night here on Race Chat Live on Blog Talk Radio. This has been the Caution Flag of Racing Radio. Chris Creighton, the Mama Bear of the 110 Nation, Lee Reed. Hopefully Craig will be able to join us sometime before the year is over. I'm the Tasmanian Double Flaggers, Taz Taylor, saying good night. We'll see you all next week.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.